The black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot of Prestige Motors, just as the afternoon sun began its descent. Behind the wheel sat James Walker, a man who had just endured a 6-hour flight and wanted nothing more than to stretch his legs. He'd been traveling in comfortable clothes, a simple hoodie and jeans, the kind of outfit that made long flights bearable. James stepped out of his rental car and took a moment to look around. The dealership was impressive, all glass and chrome with luxury vehicles gleaming under the showroom lights. He'd seen the numbers, studied the reports, knew every detail about this place on paper. But there was something about seeing it in person that made it real. He walked through the main entrance and immediately the cool air conditioning washed over him. The showroom floor stretched out before him, filled with cars that cost more than most people's houses. A sleek sports car sat on a raised platform in the center, spinning slowly under a spotlight. James walked toward it, genuinely admiring the craftsmanship. That's when he heard the footsteps approaching quickly from behind. "Can I help you with something?" The voice had an edge to it, not quite friendly, not quite professional. James turned to see a man in his 40s, wearing a sharp suit with a name tag that read Derek Patterson, sales manager. The man's arms were crossed, and his expression suggested he'd already made up his mind about something. "Just looking around," James said with a slight smile. "Beautiful cars you have here." Derek's eyes traveled from James's worn sneakers up to his hoodie, and his expression tightened. "Yeah, well, these vehicles start at $80,000. We've got some, more affordable options at our sister dealership about 15 miles from here. Might be more what you're looking for." James felt the familiar sting but kept his composure. He'd dealt with this his whole life, though it never stopped being disappointing. "Actually, I'm interested in what you have here. Mind if I take a look around?" Derek shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but we're pretty busy today. These cars require serious buyers, and I can't have my sales team wasting time with people who are just window shopping." "Window shopping?" James raised an eyebrow. "You haven't even asked me what I'm looking for." "I've been in this business for 15 years, Derek said, his voice dropping lower. "I can tell who's serious and who's not. Trust me, you'd be happier at one of those dealerships that work with, different financing options." A young salesman nearby pretended to be very interested in his computer screen, but James could see his ears were bright red. Another employee suddenly found urgent business in the back office. James took a deep breath. He could reveal who he was right now, could watch this man's face crumble as reality hit him, but something made him hold back. He wanted to see how far this would go, needed to understand exactly what kind of operation he'd just purchased. "I'd like to speak with the general manager," James said calmly. "About the business operations here." Derek actually laughed at that. "The general manager? You want to complain? About what exactly? Me doing my job?" "I want to discuss how this dealership runs," James replied, keeping his voice even. "Customer service policies, sales approaches, that kind of thing." "Oh, now you're some kind of business consultant?" Derek's face was reddening now. "Let me guess. You're going to lecture me about discrimination or some nonsense like that? Look around, buddy. We treat everyone the same here, but we also don't waste time on people who clearly can't afford what we're selling." James noticed the security guard approaching from the corner of his eye. The guard was an older man, maybe in his 60s, and he looked distinctly uncomfortable with the situation. "Derek, maybe we should just let him look around," the guard said quietly. His name tag identified him as Tom Rodriguez. "Tom, I'm handling this," Derek snapped. "This is exactly the kind of thing that drags down our numbers. People coming in here with no intention of buying, taking up time, making the place look crowded so real customers don't come in." "Real customers?" James repeated. "And what exactly makes someone a real customer in your eyes?" Derek's jaw clenched. "You know what? I've been patient enough. Tom, please escort this gentleman out of the dealership. He's disrupting our business." Tom looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "Sir," he said to James, his voice apologetic, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." James looked at Tom and saw genuine regret in the older man's eyes. He nodded slowly. "It's all right, Tom, you're just doing your job." As Tom walked him toward the door, James heard Derek behind them, already talking to another salesman. "Can you believe that guy? Comes in here dressed like he's going to the gym, wants to talk to management about operations. They all think they're entitled to waste our time." The other salesman laughed nervously, but the sound was forced. At the door, Tom paused. Look, I'm sorry about that. It's not right what just happened. James put a hand on the guard's shoulder. Don't apologize, Tom. You seem like a good man stuck in a bad situation. He pulled out a business card and handed it to him. Hold on to this. Things are going to change around here very soon. Tom looked at the card, confusion crossing his face as he read it. James walked back to his car, taking one last look at the dealership. Through the glass windows, he could see Derek talking with his colleagues, probably still making jokes about the encounter. None of them had any idea that their world was about to turn completely upside down. As James drove away, he made a mental note of everything he'd seen and heard. Tomorrow morning was going to be very interesting. Tomorrow morning, Derek Patterson was going to learn a lesson he'd never forget. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. James allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the best lessons were the ones that caught you completely by surprise. Derek Patterson arrived at Prestige Motors 15 minutes early, just like he did every Tuesday morning. He was in a good mood, actually. Sales had picked up slightly over the weekend, and he'd closed a deal on a luxury SUV that would pad his commission nicely. He grabbed his coffee from the cup holder and headed inside, already thinking about which leads he'd follow up on first. But something was different. The entire sales staff was gathered in the main conference room, and nobody was at their desks. Derek frowned, checking his phone. Had he missed a message about a meeting? Nothing. He walked toward the conference room, and that's when he saw her. Victoria Chen stood at the front of the room in a navy business suit, her expression serious. She was the regional director, the person who oversaw all 5 dealerships in the district. Derek had only met her twice, and both times had been brief introductions at corporate events. She never showed up at individual locations unless something big was happening. Derek, good. You're here, Victoria said, gesturing to an empty chair. Please sit down. We're about to begin. Derek slid into the seat, his good mood evaporating. Around him, his colleagues looked nervous. Nobody seemed to know what was going on. The young salesman from yesterday, Kevin, kept glancing at Derek with an odd expression. Victoria waited until everyone settled, then cleared her throat. Thank you all for being here on short notice. I know this is unusual, but we have important news. As many of you know, Prestige Motors has been struggling financially. We've seen declining sales, negative reviews, and a significant drop in foot traffic over the past 2 years. Derek shifted uncomfortably. He'd blamed the economy, the competition, everything except the dealership itself. After careful consideration, Victoria continued, corporate made the decision to sell this location to a private investor, someone who has a proven track record of turning around struggling businesses and who shares our commitment to excellence in customer service. Derek's stomach dropped. A new owner meant changes, evaluations, possibly layoffs. He thought about his mortgage, his car payments, his daughter's college tuition. I'm pleased to introduce you to your new owner, Victoria said, stepping aside. Mr. James Walker. The door opened and Derek's world stopped spinning. It was him. The guy from yesterday, the guy in the hoodie, the guy Derek had thrown out of the dealership. But he wasn't wearing a hoodie now. James Walker walked in wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Derek made in a month. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned every bit of his success. Derek felt the blood drain from his face. Around him, several employees who'd witnessed yesterday's incident were going pale too. Kevin looked like he might be sick. James stood at the front of the room and smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here, though I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. His voice was calm, professional, nothing like the casual tone he'd used yesterday. This was a man who commanded boardrooms, who made million-dollar decisions before breakfast. I want to be transparent with all of you, James continued. I bought this dealership because I saw potential, not just in the location or the inventory, but in the people. However, I also saw some serious problems that need to be addressed immediately. Derek wanted to sink through the floor. He could feel eyes on him, knew that people were connecting the dots. I spent yesterday afternoon observing how customers were treated here, James said, and Derek's heart stopped. I wanted to see the operation from a customer's perspective, to understand what was really happening on this floor when nobody thought the owner was watching. Victoria was watching Derek now, her expression unreadable. What I saw disappointed me, James continued. I saw assumptions being made about people based on how they looked. I saw customers being judged before anyone even asked what they needed. I saw the kind of behavior that doesn't just hurt individuals, it destroys businesses. The room was silent. Nobody dared to breathe. But I also saw something else, James said, his tone softening slightly. I saw employees who looked uncomfortable with what was happening. I saw people who wanted to speak up but didn't feel they could. And I met a security guard named Tom Rodriguez who showed more integrity in 5 minutes than some people show in their entire careers. Tom, sitting near the back, looked surprised. That tells me this dealership can be saved, James said. That tells me we have good people here who deserve better leadership and better systems. Starting today, things are going to change. He pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him. Charts and graphs appeared, showing customer complaints, online reviews, sales comparisons with other dealerships in the region. These numbers don't lie, James said. We've been losing customers at an alarming rate. And when I dug deeper, I found a pattern. Multiple complaints about discriminatory treatment. Several mentions of customers feeling unwelcome, being steered away from vehicles they could afford, being judged before anyone even spoke to them. Derek's hands were shaking now. He gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady himself. I'm implementing new training for everyone, James announced. Starting next week, we'll have comprehensive sessions on customer service, unconscious bias, and creating an inclusive environment. This isn't optional. This is mandatory for everyone who wants to continue working here. He paused, letting that sink in. I'm also promoting Tom Rodriguez to a newly created position, Director of Customer Relations. Tom will be responsible for ensuring that every single person who walks through those doors feels welcome and respected. Applause broke out, genuine and warm. Tom looked overwhelmed, his eyes glistening. Finally, James said, and his gaze landed directly on Derek. I need to speak with Derek Patterson privately after this meeting. Derek, please wait in the main office. The room seemed to hold its breath. Everyone knew. Everyone had figured it out. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Derek sat frozen in his chair. Kevin touched his shoulder as he passed, a gesture that felt like sympathy at a funeral. Victoria approached Derek, her expression stern. Mr. Walker's office now. Derek stood on shaking legs and walked toward what felt like his execution. Through the glass walls of the office, he could see James inside, reviewing documents with that same calm expression. This was it. The moment when everything Derek had built came crashing down because of one stupid decision, one terrible assumption, one moment of prejudice he couldn't take back. James looked up as Derek entered and gestured to the chair across from his desk. Close the door, Derek, we need to talk. The door clicked shut and Derek knew his life was about to change forever. Derek sat down in the chair, his palms sweating. James was behind the desk now, looking every bit the successful businessman he clearly was. The office felt smaller than it should, the walls closing in. So, James began, leaning back in his chair. Tell me about yesterday. Walk me through your thought process. Derek's mouth went dry. Mr. Walker, I need to apologize. I had no idea who you were, and Stop right there. James held up a hand. That's exactly the problem, Derek. You're apologizing because of who I am. But what if I wasn't the owner? What if I was just a regular customer who walked in looking to buy a car? Would that treatment have been okay then? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no good answer. Let me tell you something about myself, James said, pulling his chair closer to the desk. I grew up in foster care, bounced around from home to home until I aged out of the system at 18. I wore hand-me-down clothes, shoes with holes in them, and I got very used to people looking at me like I didn't belong. Derek felt shame burning in his chest. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college, James continued. Then I started a small tech company in my garage. People laughed at me. Banks wouldn't give me loans. Investors took one look at me and decided I wasn't worth their time. Sound familiar? Derek couldn't meet his eyes, but I kept going. Built that company from nothing to something worth millions, sold it 5 years ago and started investing in businesses that needed help. And you know what I learned? James leaned forward. The businesses that fail aren't usually failing because of the economy or bad luck. They're failing because of people, because of attitudes, because of exactly what you did yesterday. James opened a folder on his desk and turned it so Derek could see. It was filled with printed reviews and complaint forms. I've been researching this dealership for 3 months before I bought it, James said. Look at these. This one's from last year. A retired veteran came in to buy a truck. He was wearing his old work clothes because he'd just come from helping his grandson move. Your sales team ignored him for 40 minutes, assuming he couldn't afford anything. He left and bought a $60,000 truck from your competitor across town. Derek's face burned. Here's another one, James continued, flipping to the next page. A young woman, a doctor, came in during her lunch break wearing scrubs. She wanted to surprise her husband with a luxury sedan for their anniversary. She was treated so poorly that she filed a formal complaint with corporate. Never came back. James pulled out more pages, one after another. A Hispanic businessman who owns 4 restaurants in this city. An Asian couple who run a successful accounting firm. A black family who'd been saving for years to buy their dream car. What do they all have in common, Derek? Derek's voice came out as barely a whisper. They weren't treated right. They were judged, James said firmly. Judged by their appearance, their clothes, their skin color. And every single one of them took their money somewhere else. That's not just wrong morally, Derek, it's terrible business. James pulled up something on his computer and turned the screen toward Derek. It was security footage from various days over the past few months, video after video showing the same pattern. Well-dressed white customers being greeted immediately, offered coffee, given full attention. Meanwhile, minorities and casually dressed people were watched suspiciously, approached with skepticism, or ignored entirely. I had corporate send me all the security footage from the past 6 months, James said. Do you see the pattern? Because I do. And you know what else I found? He pulled up a spreadsheet showing sales numbers by employee. Your numbers have been declining for 2 years straight. Want to know why? Because word spreads, Derek, this community talks. People warn their friends and family to avoid this dealership. They post on social media, they leave reviews, and slowly, surely, you've been driving away half your potential customer base. Derek felt sick. He'd blamed everything else, never once considering that he might be the problem. I've also been talking to your colleagues, James said, his voice quieter now. Several employees have come forward with concerns about the work environment here. About comments you've made. About how you train new salespeople to qualify customers based on appearance. About how you mock people after they leave. I was just trying to be efficient, Derek said weakly. To focus on serious buyers. No, James said sharply. You were making assumptions. And those assumptions cost this business hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost sales. They created a toxic culture. They hurt innocent people who just wanted to be treated with basic respect. Derek sat in silence, the weight of it all crushing down on him. Here's what's going to happen, James said, his tone shifting to pure business. Effective immediately, you're suspended without pay for 2 weeks. During that time, you'll complete a comprehensive bias and sensitivity training program. It's 3 full days and you'll pay for it yourself. Derek nodded, knowing he had no choice. You'll also write personal apologies to every customer who filed a complaint about discriminatory treatment in the past year. Real apologies, not corporate speak. You'll acknowledge what you did wrong and how you plan to do better. Yes, sir, Derek managed. When you return, you'll be on probationary status for 6 months. 1 complaint, 1 incident, 1 hint of the old behavior, and you're done. No second chances. Do you understand? I understand. James closed the folder and looked at Derek directly. I'm giving you this chance because I believe people can change. I've seen it happen. But change requires acknowledging the harm you've caused and doing the hard work to be better. This isn't about me forgiving you, Derek. This is about you earning back the trust of every customer who walks through that door. Derek stood, his legs unsteady. Can I ask you something? James nodded. Why didn't you just fire me? Why give me another chance? James was quiet for a moment. Because firing you doesn't fix the problem. It just moves it somewhere else. Someone else's dealership. Someone else's customers. I'd rather invest in helping you become better than pass the problem to someone else. But make no mistake, this is your last opportunity. Derek walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Not just because you're the owner. Because you're right. About all of it. James didn't respond, just watched as Derek left the office. Through the glass walls, Derek could see his colleagues working, pretending not to watch. Tom caught his eye and gave him a small nod. Not quite friendly, but not hostile either. It was more than Derek deserved. As he gathered his things from his desk, Derek realized something. He'd spent 15 years in this business thinking he knew everything. Turned out he didn't know anything at all. The real question was whether he could actually change. or if this was just the beginning of the end. 3 weeks passed, and Prestige Motors was becoming a different place. James stood in the showroom early one morning, watching his team prepare for the day. The change was visible in small ways. The way salespeople greeted every customer who walked in, regardless of what they were wearing. The way Tom moved through the space, checking in with both staff and visitors, making sure everyone felt welcome. The way the whole atmosphere had shifted from cold and judgmental to warm and professional. But James knew the real test was still coming. Derek had completed his suspension and training. He'd written the apology letters, all 23 of them. Some customers had responded with forgiveness. Others had simply ignored them. A few had written back with anger that Derek probably needed to feel. James had read every letter before they went out, making sure they were genuine. Now Derek was back, quieter than before, working under Tom's direct supervision. James watched him interact with a young couple looking at SUVs. The old Derek would have sized them up in seconds, made assumptions. This Derek was listening, asking questions, treating them with respect. Whether it was real change or just fear of losing his job, time would tell. The training sessions James had implemented were mandatory for everyone, and he'd brought in experts who didn't sugarcoat the issues. They talked about implicit bias, about the real cost of discrimination, about how to recognize assumptions before acting on them. Some employees had resisted at first, defensive and uncomfortable, but gradually something shifted. People started sharing their own experiences of being judged, of feeling unwelcome in stores or dealerships. The conversations became real. Kevin, the young salesman, had pulled James aside after one session. "I should have said something that day," he'd admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "When Derek threw you out, I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of making waves." "I'm sorry," James had appreciated the honesty. "The important thing is what you do moving forward. Be the person who speaks up next time." But the biggest challenge came on a Tuesday afternoon. James was in his office reviewing inventory reports when Tom knocked on the door, his expression troubled. "We have a situation," Tom said quietly. "I think you need to see this." James followed Tom to the security office, where multiple monitors showed different angles of the showroom. On one screen, Derek was standing near the luxury section, talking with another salesman named Rick. A black couple in their 30s had just walked in, dressed casually in jeans and t-shirts. Tom turned up the audio feed. "Let me handle this one," Rick was saying to Derek. "You focus on that other lead." "No, it's fine, I've got it," Derek replied, but his voice was tight, nervous. James and Tom watched as Derek approached the couple. His body language was stiff, uncertain. This was his test, and everyone could see he knew it. "Good afternoon," Derek said, and James could hear the effort it took to sound natural. "Welcome to Prestige Motors. I'm Derek. How can I help you today?" The woman glanced at her husband, then back at Derek. "We're looking for an SUV, something with good safety ratings and space for our kids." "Great," Derek said. "We have several excellent options. What's your budget range, if you don't mind me asking?" The husband hesitated. "We're flexible. We want to see what you have first." James watched Derek's face carefully. He could see the old instincts fighting with the new training. The pause lasted just a moment too long. "Of course," Derek finally said. "Let me show you our full range of SUVs. We've got everything from our mid-range models to our luxury line, whatever works best for your family." He started walking them toward the vehicles, explaining features, asking about their needs. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't as smooth as it should have been. But it was different than before. Tom exhaled slowly. "He's trying." "Trying isn't enough," James said, "but it's a start." They watched as Derek spent the next 40 minutes with the couple, answering questions, arranging test drives, treating them like valued customers. When the couple said they wanted to think about it, Derek thanked them genuinely and gave them his card. After they left, Derek stood alone in the showroom for a moment, his shoulders sagging like he'd just run a marathon. But James's attention was caught by something else on another monitor. The same couple was sitting in their car in the parking lot, and they weren't leaving. The woman was on her phone, and she looked upset. "Tom, go check on them," James said immediately. "Something's wrong." Tom hurried outside, and James watched through the windows as he approached their vehicle. The conversation lasted several minutes, with Tom mostly listening. Then Tom walked back inside with the couple following him. They came straight to James's office. "Mr. Walker," Tom said, This is Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. They'd like to speak with you. James stood, shaking their hands, noting the tension in their postures. Please, sit down. What's going on? Mrs. Johnson spoke first, her voice shaking slightly. We appreciated how your salesman tried to help us today. We really did. But we need you to know something. We came to this dealership 3 times last year. 3 times. And each time we were treated like we didn't belong here. Her husband continued. The last time that same salesman Derek told us we'd be more comfortable at a buy here pay here lot. We have excellent credit. We own a business. We could have paid cash for any car on this lot. James felt his jaw tighten. I'm so sorry that happened to you. We saw the reviews online saying this place had new ownership, Mrs. Johnson said, that things had changed. We wanted to give it another chance to see if it was true. And today was better, we'll admit that. But the way he hesitated when we walked in, that pause before he decided to help us, we've experienced that too many times to ignore it. The weight of the past couldn't be erased by 3 weeks of training. James understood that now more clearly than ever. You're absolutely right, James said. And I need you to know that your experience matters. What happened to you before was unacceptable, and it's exactly why I bought this dealership. To change it, he pulled out a business card and wrote his personal cell number on the back. I can't undo what happened before, but I can promise you that I'm committed to making this right. Not just with words, but with actions. If you're willing to give us another chance, I'd like to personally help you find the vehicle you're looking for. And if you're not willing, I completely understand. The couple exchanged glances, having a silent conversation that came from years of marriage. We'll think about it, Mr. Johnson said finally, taking the card. We appreciate your honesty. After they left, James sat back in his chair, the full scope of the challenge settling over him. Tom stood in the doorway watching him. You knew it wouldn't be easy, Tom said quietly. Knowing it and living it are 2 different things, James replied. We've changed the policies, done the training, but we can't erase the history. We can't erase the harm that was done. No, Tom agreed. But we can build something new. 1 customer at a time. James looked out at the showroom, at Derek standing by the windows, probably wondering if he'd blown his second chance. At the other salespeople working with customers, trying to implement everything they'd learned. At the business he'd bought with the hope of transforming it. Change was possible. But it was slower, harder, and more painful than anyone wanted to admit. The question was whether they'd have enough time to prove it. 6 months had passed since James Walker bought Prestige Motors, and the morning sun streamed through the showroom windows as he reviewed the quarterly reports. The numbers told a story that even he hadn't fully expected. Sales were up 42%. Customer satisfaction scores had jumped from a dismal 2.3 stars to 4.7. The dealership had gone from losing money every month to becoming profitable. But more importantly, the Google reviews had changed in tone entirely. This place is completely different now, one review read. I was nervous to come back after a bad experience last year, but the new ownership has transformed everything. I felt respected and valued from the moment I walked in. Another said, finally a dealership that treats everyone with dignity. Bought my dream car here and couldn't be happier. James smiled, but he knew the numbers only told part of the story. Tom Rodriguez knocked on the office door holding a folder. In his 6 months as Director of Customer Relations, Tom had become invaluable. He'd implemented a feedback system where every customer could rate their experience anonymously, and he personally followed up on any concerns. Morning meeting in 10 minutes, Tom said. We've got something special planned. James followed Tom to the conference room where the entire staff had gathered. In the front of the room stood Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, the couple who'd given the dealership a second chance 3 months ago. Everyone, Tom began. The Johnsons wanted to come by today to share something with us. Mrs. Johnson stepped forward, smiling warmly. When we came back here 6 months ago, we honestly didn't expect much. We'd been hurt too many times by this place, but Mr. Walker convinced us to give it one more chance. Her husband continued, and we're so glad we did. Not only did we buy an SUV that we absolutely love, but the experience was everything we'd hoped it would be. We felt heard, respected, and valued. So we started telling our friends. We run a business networking group, Mrs. Johnson explained. About 200 members, mostly minority business owners in this area. We told them about the changes here, and many of them have come by. Some bought cars, others are still looking, but Everyone has mentioned how different this place feels now. James felt a warmth spread through his chest. This was what he'd been working toward. "We wanted to thank you all," Mr. Johnson said, "for proving that change is possible, for showing us that sometimes places and people really can transform." The room erupted in applause. James noticed several employees wiping their eyes, including Kevin, who'd grown into one of the top salespeople by treating every customer with genuine care. But James also noticed Derek, sitting in the back corner, his expression complicated. Derek had completed his probation period without incident. His sales numbers were decent, his customer feedback was acceptable. But there was a distance to him now, a hesitancy that never quite went away. After the meeting, as others chatted excitedly, Derek approached James. "Can we talk?" Derek asked quietly. They went to James's office, and Derek sat down with a heavy sigh. "I'm resigning," Derek said simply. "I wanted to tell you in person." James wasn't entirely surprised. "Can I ask why?" Derek looked at his hands. "Because I'm not the right person for this place anymore. Maybe I never was." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I've been doing everything you asked. Following the rules, treating customers right, going through the motions. But the truth is, I do it because I'm supposed to, not because it comes naturally, and that's not fair to anyone." "Growth takes time," James said. "You've come a long way, have I?" Derek looked up. "Or have I just gotten better at hiding what I really think? Every time someone walks in who doesn't look like a typical luxury car buyer, I still have that first instinct to judge. I catch myself, I correct it, but it's still there. And I see the way customers look at me sometimes, especially the ones who remember me from before. They're polite, but there's no trust. I can't blame them." James leaned back in his chair. "What will you do?" "I got a job at a corporate office away from customer service. Maybe that's where I belong." Derek pulled an envelope from his jacket. 2 weeks' notice officially. "But I wanted to say something else." He stood, extending his hand. "Thank you for not just firing me that first day, for giving me a chance to see what I'd become. I don't know if I'll ever fully change my instincts, but at least now I understand the damage they cause." "That's worth something." James shook his hand. "It is. And for what it's worth, recognizing your limitations is a kind of growth too." After Derek left, James sat alone with his thoughts. Not every story had a perfect redemption arc. Sometimes people changed, and sometimes they just became more aware of their flaws. Both had value. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, James was walking through the showroom when he noticed an older woman standing by the entrance, staring at the cars with an expression he recognized. It was the look of someone expecting to be disappointed. He approached with a warm smile. "Hello, welcome to Prestige Motors. I'm James, the owner here. Is there something I can help you with today?" The woman seemed surprised. "You're the owner?" "I am." She hesitated, then her eyes filled with tears. "I came to this dealership 4 times over the past 3 years. I've been saving my whole life to buy a luxury car. Just one before I'm too old to enjoy it, and every single time I was ignored or treated like I was wasting their time." James's heart ached. "I'm so sorry that happened to you. I saw online that there was new ownership," she continued, wiping her eyes. "My daughter said I should give it one more try, but I'm scared of being disappointed again." James gestured toward the showroom. "I can't change what happened before, but I can promise you that today, you'll be treated with the respect and dignity you deserve. And if for any reason you're not, you come find me personally." "Deal?" She smiled through her tears. "Deal." 3 hours later, James watched from his office as Tom helped the woman complete the paperwork on a beautiful sedan she'd chosen. She was beaming, taking photos of the car, calling her daughter to share the news. Before she left, she came to James's office. "Thank you," she said simply. "You gave me back something I thought I'd lost. The belief that I matter." After she drove away in her new car, James stood at the window watching the rain. Tom joined him. "You did good here," Tom said. "Really good." "We did good," James corrected. "All of us. But there's still work to do." "Always will be," Tom agreed. "That's the thing about change. It's not a destination. It's a practice." James thought about Derek, about the Johnsons, about the woman who'd just left with tears of joy, about every person who'd been judged unfairly, every customer who'd been turned away, every opportunity for dignity that had been stolen. He couldn't fix the past, but he could build a better future, one interaction at a time. His phone buzzed with a message from Victoria Chen, the regional director. Other dealerships asking about your training program. Corporate wants you to present at the national conference. You've started something important. James smiled. Maybe change was possible after all. Not just for one dealership, but for an entire industry. It would be slow, difficult, and imperfect. But it was worth every effort, because in the end, business wasn't just about selling cars. It was about treating people like they mattered, like they belonged, like their dreams were worth respecting, and that was something worth fighting for.